You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello, and welcome again to the Monster Sci-Fi Show. I am your host, The Monster, and we're finally done with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, Part 6. We have reached the end of the series, and I don't think we'll get a Season 2. There's no need to, so to speak. Alright, so we start off with Reva magically appearing on Tatooine and asking, where can I find this Owen? All right. Meanwhile, as the refugee ship is flying away against a Star Destroyer, like, come on. You have this massive Star Destroyer that is just running right behind it, firing at it. Every once in a while, it hits the shields, but that's it. And then Vader says, just increase more firepower. I'm like, dude, go into your TIE fighter, get a couple of escorts, take it out yourself. Easy peasy. No, we don't want to do that. We go back into Tatooine. So the guy who said, I know Owen, or reveals where Owen is, he happens to find Owen in the market that's nearby and tells him, there's someone who's looking for you. He goes back. Somehow he gets back sooner than Reva gets to actual Lars homestead. So how is that possible? I don't know, and I don't care. But at least we had a moment for Aunt Beru to kind of have not so much of an action scene, but take a little more of a charge mentality, because, Owen's like, we got to leave this place. Like, no. We're gonna stand our ground here. And I thought, that's kind of cool to see a side of Aunt Beru that's not always docile. As that they were preparing, they were telling Luke, we have activities from the Tusken Raiders. They're the ones causing this trouble. That's why we're doing all this. And I'm like, really? Withdrawing the Tusken Raiders under the bus, metaphorically, considering what we saw in the book of Boba Fett. Because honestly, the whole Native American Indian kind of vibe, and we're still okay. So they're to blame. I guess you don't want to tell Luke anything about the Empire, or that there's an Inquisitor after him. I don't know. I mean, the kid's got to grow up somehow, but it goes back to the line later on in the moment that he just needs to grow up as a boy. The rest will take care of itself. So I guess if that's what it is, fine. It's not like I wrote this crap. When we're back at the ship and Obi-Wan finally decides, I'll just depart this ship and then he'll follow me because that's what Vader does. The Grand Inquisitor kind of like, you don't need to do that. Just go after the prize and just get rid of all the other Jedis. And Vader's like, no, we're going after Kenobi. So he turns the whole ship to go after Kenobi. And I swear to God, there's this one quick shot as the camera kind of goes, focuses away from the Inquisitor back to Vader, that you can see him kind of giving him a side eye that I just love. And I just picked up the second time that I watched this, and I'm like, I like that a lot. All right, so we move on to this planet that Obi-Wan decided to stay and fight Vader, because that's what Vader would do. He left his ship, came alone, and then he says this dumb line. It's like, Obi-Wan, you came here to destroy me? I'm like, no, you came here. He was already there. He didn't come anywhere. It's not like he picked it. It's not like, you've come to destroy. No, he's waiting for you. You're the one that just arrived. Just the wording just sounds, just the wording itself just sounded off, considering what was about to happen. When Vader and Obi-Wan fought in, was it this a third episode? I forgot. Vader had the upper hand. Literally the upper hand to the point where he's fighting with one hand. Obi-Wan is like backing down and is like he is not in any form like he used to be. Not even like marginally. He is terrible at what he's doing. So the two of them go back and forth, and it becomes then very anime, Dragon Ball Z moments. Anakin, Vader, starts putting his hand on the ground and starts breaking it apart and then starts to bury poor Obi-Wan into the ground and throws more rocks on him. I'm like, okay, he's not going to die, right? And then Obi-Wan comes back and then he launches like, look at all my big rocks. We got big sand. Now it's going to get everywhere. And then he pelts him literally with all the big rocks. And I'm like, he's not taking damage. Like, he's able to fend off a lot of the rocks, but he's not taking damage. Until we get this cool moment where, well, before that. So they cut back to Reva now at Lara's homestead. And, for her to be kind of, I don't know, subtle, she lights up her lightsaber, which makes her a huge target because the lights are pretty much dark. And then, like, you can see this red streak, and it's not as if she is that good that she could then block back any blaster shot to come her way. She's ducking while holding the lightsaber. I'm like, you suck at what your job is right now. But in any case, crossover back to the fight again. And this time, Obi-Wan is holding his own and really laying it on thick to the point that Vader is now having to use two hands, which was something I missed the first time. But he is really holding hard with two hands. Obi-Wan then is able to get a very crippling blow to the helmet. And this is where I'm like, this is what I'm here for. That moment, which you already saw in Rebels, but fine. Let's just see this in live action. Where you see part of the helmet intact, the other half not intact, and you can see Anakin behind it. I also love the fact that we have Anakin's real voice and then the voice of the helmet break in as Vader. So the two halves are kind of going together at the same time. I also love the fact that at this moment, when we see him talking, Vader and the helmet and Vader himself were like in blue. Towards the end of his little speech, it becomes red again. And I'm like, that is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful to see that kind of moment that, you didn't kill Anakin. Vader took care of that and did the deed. So from a certain point of view, Obi-Wan, you are correct that the good man was killed by Vader, who was a former pupil of yours. It is still a harsh line to tell a kid from a certain point of view, your dad did it yourself. But in any case, so that's why I've always loved that line to be part of my tag about, from a certain point of view. It's interesting, but it's also very divisive. We go back to Tatooine, and Reva is able to escape Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and is looking for Luke, who's running into the mountains. And then he falls. Dumb kid. And then Reva, lights her lightsaber and really wants to take out Luke. But then she starts to see herself in the exact same pose and reliving that moment in which she sees herself as Anakin killing the younglings. I am still kind of clueless as to what would this have accomplished. Was this something to hurt Ben in relations to Luke? Because there's nothing in here that says that this is Anakin's son and Leia was his daughter too. So that's why I'm not clear about the motivation until she breaks down. And of course, she couldn't do the deed, but she breaks down telling Anakin, am I bad? Am I like Anakin? And it's like, no, you're not. So, she throws away her protractor lightsaber. And I'm like, dude, everyone needs to stop littering Tatooine because Rey did it. Obi-Wan did it before. And now she's doing it. So, poor Jawas have like a landmine full of lightsabers all over the damn planet, making a fortune out of this. Then we get a scene back on Mustafar where Emperor Palpatine is talking to Vader, telling him, are your feelings on this matter about Obi-Wan clear that you're going to destroy him? Which, obviously, that's not going to happen. But, Vader lies, like, I'll take care of this. In any case, we come to the sequence back on Alderaan where Obi-Wan arrives with Lola. And I'm like, dude, you could have just sent that by FedEx back to the kid. Because literally, you would think that she's like, I'm happy to see Obi-Wan again. And she passes him by just to look at Lola flying back into her hands. And I'm like, that little piece of shit did the exact same thing. Poor Chewie in A Force Awakens. And like, ignored the fact that you just lost your ex-husband, Chewie's best friend, to hug Rey, a complete stranger that you don't know. And I'm like, that's messed up. You screwed him over from not getting a medal in A New Hope, and now you're doing this. I'm like, it goes all the way back to her childhood. She is this kid all over again who belongs to stay in jail forever. I'm just saying, as hot as she got later on, that's not a chick I want to be with. Considering, her true feelings, she just ignores your feelings altogether. Whatever. Yes, I know I'm projecting, but that's not the point. All right. Now, the second to last moment, we go back to Tatooine. And we see him packing up his camp from his cave, and I guess he's moving on up somewhere on the west side or east side of Tatooine, who knows. But in any case, he visits Uncle Owen one more time and says, yeah, you're right. He needs to be with you. I need to stay out of his life. And then Uncle Owen just changes his mindset. Do you want to meet the boy? Like, yes, he does. So he gets the T-16 toy that he's been holding on to, walks over to Luke. Luke gets up, smiling at him, and he says, hello there. And I love that moment so damn much. It took us 5+ episodes, or this is almost 6 episodes, just to say hello there to Luke and how he got the T-16 Skyhopper. It took a long time to get there. Was it worth it? Yeah. But I liked it enough that I'm like, yeah, I did. I really did. Because it comes back later on, when he meets him in A New Hope for the first time, by us standards. But when he finds R2, he's like, hello there. So I'm like, I love this. It does what it needed to do in that moment. I just wish the rest of the series did something similar to that point. We move on. Obi-Wan is out traveling in the desert, and he comes across, finally, the ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn. There was mention about Yoda in Revenge of the Sith at the end of that movie, that he's been in contact with his former master. And I will show you how to do that. So it took 10 years to get to this point? I mean, no. It does not take 10 years. And the reason why I say that, because Luke, when he lost Ben in A New Hope, technically he came back in Empire Strikes Back, and he saw him there. And that was not 10 years. So that's just me being nitpicky, I know, but that's just the way I see things. All right, so he says, I'm back, and then he fades away. I'm like, what the hell did you stop doing that? It took you 10 years to come here, and now you're just going to walk and fade away. Whatever. Now, the other thing that I've been wanting to talk about is that this is now 10 years after Revenge, but it's still not that moment before we see New Hope. There's still another gap, about another 5-6 years, I guess, or 10 years. I'm not sure what's the time frame here. But the Ben or the Obi-Wan that we see with Darth Maul takes place about 4 years after this series takes place, which we see a much older Ben. And I'm like, but in 4 years, I don't see him transitioning to that much older Obi-Wan Kenobi. But we'll see, because, desert life, you know what I'm saying? Kind of plays a wreck on your good looks, I guess. We'll get there within the timeline. Yeah, just leave it at that. Overall, I don't think this series was really necessary, just because there were no real stakes when it came to Obi-Wan, when it came to Vader, or to Leia, or to Luke, again, it kind of played evenly from the beginning to the end. All right, sure, they met one other time, or twice other time. Fine, they had a couple of fights, and nothing mattered after that. So I'm like, that's fine. But I just wish there was a little bit more interaction, a little bit more thought about what you're going to do to tell this story, to get the Obi-Wan who lost everything in revenge to that moment in which he becomes the Obi-Wan that we see in A New Hope. Solo had that exact same issue. We saw Solo appear in A New Hope, and his movie, his own origin story, gives us moments that builds him up as a character, but it still is missing the point of view that Solo has to become very cynical and very self-preserving of his own interests. It's not exactly the whole Solo from being the young kid to the Solo that we now know later on in A New Hope. There is still another sequence that needs to be done. Here, I don't think it's necessary that you need to go any further. But in any case, now that I've done all 6 episodes, some great, some like not great at all, I am now going to watch that fan edit that comprises of all 6 episodes into one large edit. That's going to be, hopefully, a much better storytelling, because there's so much filler in this that I'm glad someone took the time to do this. So I'm now going to end this podcast and then eventually watch it and then come back and record my thoughts about which was better, this series versus this fan edit of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. So, all right, so I cannot wait for that to happen. And on that note, we are done for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series reviews-ish. More rants than reviews, in my opinion. But in any case, thank you for listening to me and to the Monster Sci-Fi Show. It's sci-fi from a certain point of view. Good night.
Winter is coming. Prepare with a fine cigar and listen to the Cigar Nerds podcast. We smoke cigars and talk about movies and all kind of nerdy things. Available at cigarnerdpodcast.com. Also on the ESO Network at esonetwork.com.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.